First, second streaming. Let's wait a little bit and I'll start my introduction. The introduction to this I Need Living Conversation 121st session. I'm with Sacred Blue Heron Woman. I am Julian Catari. And this session is about into the mysticum of the Holy Mother. Holy Mother being our Great Mother Earth. And this conversation was supposed to happen last week. It was missed because of me. I was out of the weather, but here we are, and we're having it now. And everybody be welcome, and please open up a little space, whatever you are, and allow this information to seep in, and be comfortable. Get something warm if you're cold, and get ready for a beautiful journey with Sacred Blue Heron Woman. How are you?
I am fabulous. With 12 baby goats.
Yeah, being born in the cold
Yeah. Yeah.
already.
So
So what's this about? Let's take us in this journey.
well, Holy Mother isn't just Gaia or Holy Mother Earth. It's also she's the creator of all that is, ever has been. And I mean, what we call God, the unified field. This is holy. This is
Mm-hmm.
more what I'm speaking of when I talk about Holy Mother. I'm just now getting into the Gaia theory, so we will
Mm-hmm.
relate that ultimately also because she is Gaia also. But so the Great Mother, Holy Mother in her many aspects, and this tonight's not going to seem after a bit like we're in a mysticum at all. But before we can get into the mystery of the field, the
Mm-hmm.
all, we have to peel back. We have to dig through the crud, the
Mm-hmm.
scum of this stupid mechanical world that we live in. And
Mm-hmm.
that, so the Great Mother, our Great Mother, Holy Mother in her many aspects, like maiden, raging warrior, benevolent mother, death dealing, and all wise crone, has been with us from the beginning, and she awaits us now. She is the beauty of the green earth, the life-giving waters, the consuming fire, the radiant moon, and the fiery sun. She is star goddess. She is spider woman. She is Ishmukane. She weaves the luminous web that creates the universe. As Earth, the great planetary spirit being, she germinates life within her dark womb. She is Gaia also.
Mm-hmm.
Based in matricide, the death of all nature, and the utter exploitation of humans in general, the patriarchal system has now run itself into the ground, and there is no other way but for us to return to the mother who gives us life. The first humans are lost to us in the mists of time, but their primal visions, their images, and gestalts of their human experience on this planet still resonate in our psyches, as well as in our historic religious ontological symbols. These Stone Age people bequeathed to all humanity a foundation of ideas upon which the mind could raise its structures. These are the cave as the female womb, the mother as a pregnant earth, the magical fertile female as the mother of all animals, and ultimately the Venus of Lausel, standing with the horn of the moon upraised in her hand. Also the cave as the female tomb where life is buried, painted blood red and awaiting rebirth. And we see that story in the Bible on the story of this, quote, Jesus' death on the cross. He was put in the female tomb to be raised again,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that part is left out. So it seems as if the first human's existence was dominated by a celebration of the female processes, of the mysteries of menstruation, pregnancy, and childbirth, of the analogous abundance of Holy Mother Earth, Gaia, of her seasonal movements of her animals and the cycles of time in her great round, the great round of the Great Mother. And they knew that the first God was female, but yet more than either female or male exclusively. Both and. I think we need to really get into this concept of both and, because we're in this concept of either or.
Mm-hmm.
With Holy Mother, there's a both and.
Yeah.
So this world we have brought forth together relegates those images to the psychological realm as archetypes of the unconscious, while anthropological writers continue to explain physical, real human development solely in terms of the experiences of the male body in hunting, aggression, and tool making. And so the first years of our human history is denied and relegated to a mind trip or psychological software. So to approach our human past and female goddess, and I'm using the word goddess and both female because they both tie both together, right? The words of the patriarchy are God, he, male, which makes it exclusive. When you say female, you've got both. When you say woman, you've got both. When you say goddess, you've got both, masculine and feminine. So we need a wagon with at least two wheels, one that is mythical, historical, and archaeological, and the other is biological, anthropological. And a strong track has already been laid down for the first wheel, but the other side of our wagon has almost no wheel and no track, because the physical cultural anthropologists are off somewhere else mapping the evolution of Tarzan. So the popular image of early human society as being dominated, indeed created by male hunters and ferocious territorial headbangers, just doesn't hold water, because the human presence on Earth would have never evolved with that. Just imagine that. Can anything come of this silly expression that we see in bars when men are drunk? All the
Yeah.
fighting that takes place. Right? So the fact is that it was from the first inner circle of women and men together that the campsite, the first hearth, the first circle of birth, that human society evolved. Our first humans on the time edge of civilization, and I use that generously, shaped and sustained human culture by communities of creative, sexually and psychically active women and men who were receivers and transmitters of both terrestrial Holy Mother and cosmic energy Holy Mother.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to understand how and why these ancient women matriarchal cultures have been buried, ignored, denied, or passed off as mythology by Western historians, who insist that real history began only about 5,000 years ago with the relatively recent institutions of patriarchy. Ancient women original communism, and I took a big step. I had a gestalt experience writing that, because I did not want to use that word. I did not want to write that word because it has such horrific connotations. And I realized that communal farming, communal village is communism. But it's not. So here we go. We're going to dig the crud away.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the first entry into the crud begins, that covers the mysticum.
Mm-hmm.
So Friedrich Engels and Karl Marx recognized this, that the original communism was matriarchal societies. Both men based their analysis of social development on the primary existence of the ancient matriarchies that were communal matrifocal systems. They were also influenced by the writing of a man named Lewis Morgan, an American anthropologist. Morgan lived with and studied the Iroquois. In their kinship structure, language, and customs, he found evidence of early communal and blood relationships based on different stages of group marriage. He offered his conclusion that such a society was matrifocal and matrilinear of necessity, since within a group marriage structure, only the mother can definitely be known as parent of the child. What does group marriage mean? Well, many kinship systems distinguish between the biological father of a child and the social father, who's usually the mother's brother or some other male relative of the mother's, making it a group marriage. So Engels and Marx were not fully aware of women's achievements in past cultures. And with Marx and Engels, yeah, a narrowing of focus then to strictly economic and class analysis totally obscured the original state of being, which was more profoundly spiritual than economic. So this Marxist narrowing of focus and its consequent denial of human spiritual experience has had tragic repercussions throughout the world, which makes us shudder when we hear the word communism. How
Yeah.
did, huh?
I was going to comment about that. That so many folks would be so reluctant to that word
Well,
nowadays, but this is exactly what they need to hear. I'm so happy.
that's why I told you I had like a gestalt experience. I had to, I struggled with this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did this happen? Well, Karl Marx seemed to be a deeply compassionate man with his opium of the people statement, which is never fairly quoted. It's evidence of his compassion. So his opium of the people statement is this part of it. Religious distress is at the same time the expression of real distress and the protest against real distress. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, just as it is the spirit of a spiritless situation. It is the opium of the people. The demand to give up illusions about its conditions is the demand to give up a condition that needs illusions. Criticism has plucked the imaginary flowers from the chain, not so that men will wear the chain without fantasy or consolation, but so that they will break the chain to cull the living flower. No one has said it better or more clearly recognized our human beings' absolute right to cling to spirit in a spiritless situation and to heart in a heartless world. And because both spirit and heart are real, they alone have helped millions of human beings survive in otherwise unsurvivable situations. The tragedy of Marx and of Marxists was to confuse spirit, great mother, with established religions. Let me repeat that. So it resonates, reverberates
Mhm.
throughout the world. The tragedy of Marx and Marxists was to confuse spirit, great mother, with established religions.
Wow. Yeah. Big tragedy, huh?
Yes, biggest tragedy of all. And we're just now getting into the scum.
Yeah. Wow. I can think of so many uh, intellectuals that would need to hear this.
Yeah, yeah. They saw clearly, Marx and Engels, and historically, that established religion aligned itself with the oppressor, the oppressing class, the oppressing monarchy, the oppressing social and economic systems. They saw our systems. They saw the seeds of oppression in religious doctrines, doctrines that rationalize poverty and enslavement and excuse brutal tyranny and greed by setting God's seal on social systems based on hierarchies of rich and poor, hierarchies of the rulers and the ruled. They saw the wealth and power of the churches and the wretched passivity of the believers. They saw that the church was a man made institution that gained and retained power by exploiting the reality of the spirit versus the reality of physical need. They heard sermons condemning material wealth and earthly pleasures, while the churchmen and their rich supporters lived in opulent security, and the mass of believers lived on their stony knees in rags. And they heard these conditions justified as God's plan for man. And growing up in religion, I heard that over and over and over. They saw that religious establishments take it upon themselves to define spirit and God and human destiny, always in their own elitist terms and always to their advantage only. So, seeing these things, Marx and Marxists rightly condemned the collusion of established religions in the historic oppression of human beings. However, tragically, they also denied the reality of the human spirit and its genuine longings, its genuine desire. I think that this word, its genuine longings, answers the question we were just talking about, Julian. I think most people are so tied into the system of making money that they don't know what their longing is. And desire, longing, is what moves structure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so Marx and Engels, they rightly wanted to save humanity from religious exploitation, but in their narrowing of focus, their economic and class reductiveness, they split the human being into two conflicting parts: material existence versus spiritual existence.
And that's
The
always the
split,
problem, huh? That duality,
right,
creating dualism where there isn't any.
right, right. So the split was just the mirror image of the already existing religious dualism, and this is what we need to understand. In an infinite universe, there are hardly any absolute truths, but there is one blatant absolute truth that we are not recognizing, and that is that we are two-dimensional beings. We are spirit and we are matter.
Mm-hmm.
That is an absolute fact. That is
Yeah.
an absolute truth that cannot ever be transcended.
Mm-hmm. It can be denied, or it can be. You can see one of those sides, and that's it.
Well, we've denied it for thousands of years, but
Mm-hmm.
it's showing its face. She had to show herself to Don or Don Diego on Tepeyac Hill, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be acknowledged. So as dogmatic Marxist communism has unfolded in country after country, this split reinforced the same alienation of the human condition that Marx wanted to resolve. It created the dreary state capitalism of what used to be Soviet Russia and its satellites, in which the state works dourly and mechanically to enforce its definition of human life as spiritless mechanism, and is evident in China and the Chinese Communist Party and Cuba and right wherever communism still in Nicaragua. We might not class Nicaragua as communism, but what I've seen of it, their dictator is pretty damn Marxist, CCPist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's given fuel to the propaganda engines of the reactionary systems in all countries, so that the world is ripped apart in a false dichotomy between godless communism and divine capitalism. That's where the longing gets repressed, Julian, is in the divine capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
That's where desire gets repressed.
Wow. Mm.
But you asked the question, the answers are coming now that we're getting
Mm-hmm.
into this. If communism is atheistic, its opponents can claim to be mandated by God, however phony this claim might be. No matter how corrupt and collusive the established religions of the world are known to be, they still stand there offering themselves as the only sanctuary of spirit in a spiritless world, the spiritless world that they created. While Marxism stands as a total fanatical repudiation of spiritual reality. And this perception of Marxism helped fuel the equally fanatic revivals of fundamentalist religions throughout the world. Marx and Engels confused spirit with established religion. Again, confused Holy Mother with established religion, as their doctrinaire followers continue to do, because as Western white males, they could not see the total paradigm of ancient women's original communism. Coming from this linear, fragmenting, and reductive tradition with its historic roots in Judeo-Christian Bible, as well as the Aristotelian, Platonic, Greco-Roman hyper-rationality, they could not comprehend the primal holism of human experience in and with Holy Mother Gaia, Earth, and Holy Mother Creator, unified field of all being.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, Marxist communism tends to reinforce rather than oppose capitalism's notorious strategy of alienation. Marxist analysts are generally obsessed with isolating economic, productive development from magical, religious, and sexual development. A thinker named Paul wrote, "There is the Marxist assumption that throughout history, human societies have always aimed first and foremost to increase production and consumption. But the human being does not at birth bear within itself this as the finishing meaning of her or his life. Consumption is not with us from birth. Yes, we're hungry, we eat, but this concept of consumption to the point of having to have storage facilities on every other corner because we have to consume so much goods is not our inherent way of being.
Mm-hmm.
The maximization of consumption or of power or of sanctity are not tendencies inherent in the newborn child. It is the prevailing culture that will domesticize him or her, that she needs these things.
Mm-hmm.
If Marx was trying to eliminate patriarchal religion founded on privilege and property and mystification of reality, and functioning through the exploitation of human labor and human sexuality, that would be fine. But he was also denying what is the very truth of human existence and the essence of the original matriarchies, that the experienced unity of psychic, productive, sexual, cosmic power and activity is in the egalitarian collection of women and men. And this is what patriarchy sets out to do, to split material production from spiritual experience, science from magic, medicine from herbal knowledge, and to psychic seasonal environment, sexuality from the sacred, art from craft, language from poetry, and to replace the resultant specialized, abstract, and mechanistic knowledge in the hands of a privileged male elite that are organized into professions, hierarchies, and classes, to reduce the ecstatic dance of muscle, blood, and soul to factory assembly lines, production output schedules, and gross national product.
Mm-hmm.
Patriarchy divides life into higher and lower classes, labeled spirit versus nature or mind versus matter. And typically in this alienated symbolism, the superior spirit mind is male and white, while the inferior nature matter is female, black, Filipino, Asian, Mexican, Latino. This false dualistic symbolism arises from an enforced order of male domination. White male domination. With the aid of such phallic psychology, men can then go about the earth, men and women, not just men and women, can go about the earth raping nature, exploiting resources and human labor, manipulating and improving her with technological, mechanical inventions and progressive goals. In patriarchy, humans, when I say man here in this statement, I'm referring to humankind, not just men, not just white men. All of us, because we've all been patriarchalized. In patriarchy, humans, are separate from the earth and emulate some aloof and disconnected sky god of his own creation. And so this intellectual separation leaves him and her to feel free to devastate the more than human life world without any sense that they belong to this common ecosystem. So she exploits it, totally alienate it from the fact of his continuity with it for the deluded profit of the few and the existential pain of the many. Patriarchy exists by destroying the original holism. Marxist communism does not resolve this destruction. It compounds it with a different rhetoric. It gets rid of God and the church only to substitute it with another tyranny, that of the state or the machine or the party or the production quota. So please tell me from that sentence, which one of our countries are not communist? We're all so freaking scared of communism, but tell me, which one of our countries that works for a corporation is not communist?
In that sense of being a tyrant, and they all are.
The machine, the production capacity, absolutely. It has simply changed the brand name of the chains.
Right.
That's going to be another nice quote of mine that I use all the time now. It simply changed the brand name. Just because you change the brand name of your chains doesn't make them any more comfortable.
Right. Or any more healthy or any more anything.
Yeah. So truly human politics must work on returning to spiritual systems that are harmonious with all our visions of creative communal life. This creative communal life is what is missing under both of the competing world powers, which is, what did I say? Spiritless communism versus divine capitalism. Both sides of the same coin. Capitalism and Soviet Chinese communism are based on the denial of communal celebration. Celebration is a play of the spirit, and there is no profit in play of the spirit, celebration, or communal existence. Neither the God of the dollar nor the God of the state allow for participation in the biological, spiritual, sexual adventure that is life. You cannot separate those three. Cannot. They've tried like hell, and that's what our society has come to. So Wilhelm Reich of the orgone theory, orgone energy, is not connected to Marxism, but this is where he began. His early work was an attempt to link the Marxist economic class analysis with a psychoanalytical understanding of the significant sexual repression in the development of fascist patriarchal society. He chronicled the successful manipulation of the German people by Nazi ideology. He argued that people had already been conditioned by generations of religious and cultural directed psycho-spiritual repression to respond obediently to and cooperate unquestioningly with sadism, tyranny, and genocide. He said that a hypnotic leader like Hitler did not create the conditions. He just merely exploited them for his own reason. Fascism is not a wild, barbaric phenomenon that appears suddenly without reason in the midst of civilization. It is the result of a long conditioning domestication process, and the institutions that do the conditioning domesticating are those of the civilization itself. He said that fascist thought and behavior is not a national aberration, but a historically ingrained feature of the psyche of civilized people, a feature clearly visible in the history of colonialism and imperialism. His point was this, that changing the objective economic social systems alone is not enough. Repressive behavior, sadistic power relations, competitive greed to exploit, dominate, and humiliate, and our accommodation to these insults are by now conditioned into the nervous system of our civilized societies. This repressive wiring of our nervous systems occurs at the most intimate levels of sex and spirit. The recreations of the human being must occur on these levels also if we truly want a human revolution. Otherwise, anything else is just a changing of the guard, a changing brands of the chains,
Mm-hmm.
changing the brand name of the chains. Another problem area for all this is the assumption that matriarchal society, where it existed, occurred only at very low stages of production and only under primitive conditions. While in fact, evidence shows that some of the most advanced societies of the ancient world, technologically advanced as well as culturally advanced, were matrifocal, women-oriented and led by women. The early Cretans were worshippers of the goddess, and Cretan women were cultural leaders on all levels, with Crete being a major cultural and trading center of its day. At home, the Cretans had indoor baths with hot and cold water running through ceramic pipes. Imagine that. And we think we're the only civilization to have hot and cold water running through PVC pipes that burst when it freezes. And we're so freaking civilized.
Yeah.
I'm saying this because I just experienced it again.
Oh.
Yeah, yesterday was crazy. So Cretan plumbing in 1700 BC was far superior to anything achieved in Europe till after AD 1700. What's that, 2,000 years?
Yeah.
The graceful and artistic Etruscans were also matriarchal, and so were the early Egyptians. Traces of matriarchy existed in Egypt down through the later empires and dynasties. In these cultures, as in many others, the family group lived in the land belonging to it, and the mothers knew they belonged to that area of the land. A woman's husband or lover lived with the woman and her kin group. Children, regardless of the father's identity or legal relation, lived with the mother's family group. Ancient Egyptian law clearly designated that all family property, land, and household goods belonged to the woman, and that she, married or unmarried, had total disposition of her own belongings, including herself. No one studying the Cretans, Etruscans, or Egyptians could refer to these cultures as primitive. Very advanced cultures were also developed by the matriarchal Dahomey, I think that's how it's pronounced, and Ashanti peoples of West Africa, and by the Naya people of Kerala in southern India. Among Native Americans, it is largely the matrifocality of the Pueblo people that allowed them to endure so long in their old ways, with strong architectural technologies developed among them. And I'm not saying here that matriarchy was a system in which women went around ruling everyone with a big stick, because that's what we're used to. That's the only vision we can see. Matriarchies are not built on dominance principles, but on facts of blood kinship, including the primacy of the mother. Economic relations were not experienced as separated from religious and social relationships. They were originally based on gift exchange, which served a communal bonding function, not a competitive or profit-making one. And material goods had value only in terms of the social or spiritual uses to which they were put. During 7,000 to 6,000 BC, the Sahara was a rich and fertile land, and a great civilization flourished there. Images of the horned goddess have been found in caves on the now inaccessible plateau that is the center of the Sahara Desert. When change sent people out of the center, they brought with them the religion of the Black Goddess, the Great Mother of Africa. The original Black Goddess was regarded as bisexual. Oh my goodness, really? The instrument of her own fertility. She was the ancient witch who carried a snake in her belly. The creator of the gods of Dahomey was called Mawulisa, both female and male, self-fertilizing, seen as the earth and the rainbow. And the Africans believed that Mother Earth is ultimately more powerful than the sky and its gods. The sky can withhold rain, but Earth is the source of life itself. And now the Gaia hypothesis of modern environmental science has remembered this ancient concept. The sky, with all its dramatic life-giving movement, is in fact created by Gaia, Mother Earth. The envelope of air and moisture surrounding us is really her breathing. So the royal families of Egypt, along with the common people, were matriarchal. A Black historian named John G. Jackson devoted his life's work to pointing out that the ancient African societies were neither primitive nor undeveloped, but they formed the creative cradle of the world. For example, of early technologies, the remains of graded roads and cultivation terraces are found throughout Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and there are megalithic structures in West Africa. Imagine that. We don't hear about that. In India, there's evidence that shows the early inhabitants of India, the Dravidians, were Black Africans. These Dravidians founded the first Indian civilization in the Indus Valley with large cities, 2-story brick houses, bathrooms with drains leading to brick sewers under the street. Imagine that. We think we're the only civilized society. Now listen to this. A Dravidian-made column of welded iron in a temple courtyard in Delhi has stood for over 4,000 years without showing any rust. You tell me something that we've made in our society that stands for 4,000 years without rust.
We can't make anything that lasts long anymore.
No, we can't make anything that lasts even 100 years anymore. Can't make anything that lasts 25
we can,
years.
But it's not good for business.
Yeah. So the pictographic script of the Dravidians is almost identical to that found in the ruins of Easter Island. So all this evidence supports the probability that the ancient Africans were global mariners, traders, settlers, spreading their advanced matriarchal culture everywhere like seeds. So what does this tell us? That human development does not proceed in a straight line, from the primitive to the advanced. Nothing in nature proceeds in straight lines. It's all circles and spirals. So creation is actually should rather be considered spiration, because it's a spiration. It's a creation of spirals. And so human cultures, like individual beings, go through cycles of development and regression. Empires rise and fall. The contemporary world now ruled essentially by white patriarchal elite. Even if they're Black, they've become white enough to be part of or if they're Mexican, or if they're Filipino, or what, they've become white enough to be part of it. It considers itself to be the peak of human development. In its linear view, all past cultures were by nature inferior, simply because they were earlier in time and existed as mere steps on the grand stairway leading to the supreme white maledom. This linear development is never questioned in the official view because it comes from God, or it derives from Newton and the internal combustion engine. Confronted with evidence of the existence of past great cultures, whether of Black Africans or Central American Mayans or the Mediterranean matriarchies, the tendency is to deny and mock the evidence of them and treat them with contempt as some form of lavish barbarism, and then to quickly rush to point out that these early cultures were limited in technology. What technology were they limited in? Oh my goodness, they didn't have the technology of smog or smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then it's rushed to say that they practiced human sacrifice, as though we don't practice human sacrifice now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but it's all done under the guise of immunizations. Immunizations aren't human sacrifice by any stretch of the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were earlier in time, most of the arts, crafts, technologies, and religious spiritual insights we boast about and try to claim intellectual property rights to were invented by the early ancient matriarchal societies. People can go backward in cultural and intellectual development, and whether backwards or forwards, the movement is always spiral, not in a straight line. So, by all accounts, the major cause of cultural repression during the past 2,000 years and more has been political invasion and the cultural colonialism that follows. The invaders try to destroy the existing social forms by force and punitive colonial practices. They attempt to impose their own cultural and religious patterns on the conquered, because culture is a people's vision of themselves in relation to the world, created by themselves through a blood continuity of time and space. Political invasion via cultural colonialism weakens the creative will of the conquered by destroying the people's coherent vision of themselves. And that's where the death of the dreamers, the death of the desire, which is a biological force, is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guns, police, and the invaders' law help the process, but imposition of alien cultural symbols and religious ideas are the most effective tools in the long run for obliterating or distorting a people's self-image, because they are aimed at the most intimate part of human beings, sex and spirit. Or how about taking an apparition of Holy Mother that appeared and distorting it into something that seems palatable, so that the people you're trying to conquer will eagerly succumb.
Mm-hmm.
By the time European and Arabic slave traders and colonial invaders reached Africa, that continent's great period of cultural development and extension had peaked, but the matriarchal social patterns were still intact, and people still worshiped the Black Goddess with bisexual powers, and they still participated in the cyclic process of Mother Earth as a sacred year cycle ritual. And it was these matrifocal social and kinship patterns and the goddess-oriented spiritual participations that the colonialist invaders had to break in order to impose imperialist domination and exploitive slavery on the people. And how hard is it to get anyone to participate in anything now? Right? Wherever Catholicism, Christianity, or Islam has impinged on the life of Africans and others, it was introduced by invaders in whose interest it was to detach the local inhabitants from their dependency on the rules of behavior demanded by agricultural and seasonal change. This pattern paradigm of patriarchal imperialism we find repeated again and again and again and again throughout the world. It was imposed by Imperial Rome on its colony, Europe, at the beginning of the Christian era. To break up the ancient maternal kinship groupings and the sacred life patterns that followed, the invaders, for the purpose of robbing the native people of their land, stealing Earth's raw resources, and exploiting human labors, the colonial army sent in the missionaries to introduce the abstract and alien concepts of a father right and a father God who was the enemy of the Great Mother. Christian and Catholic missionaries preaching of the Heavenly Father and His Son, and Muslims carrying the message of Allah and His Prophet Muhammad performed the same colonizing functions. They found the mother's people who were alive and well within the holistic now, and they denounced the people's ways and redefined them as backward children of a distant, aloof, paternalistic power. All exploitations follow quite easily and self-righteously from such a redefinition. Colonialist powers really convince themselves that they're doing their victims a favor by lifting them up from Mother Earth through whips, degradations, imprisonment, hunger, and slaughter, so they can glimpse through the tears a far-off shining palace, the abode of the Heavenly Father that is supposedly a better place. What this means in practice is that the mother, the people's blood identity, is denounced in the name of some superior Father God who always happens to live somewhere else. Because in maternal cultures, the father is a social rather than biological role. And because this father role is defined in terms of its relation to the mother, the men don't own their children or their wives. That's the biggest distinction. Because now, for hundreds of thousands of years, marriage has been an ownership.
Yeah.
Right? And it goes both ways. That's where jealousy comes from. He's mine. He better not look at you. He's mine. Right? Yeah. He's my property.
Yeah.
Goes both ways. Comes from both men and women. In some matrifocal cultures who practice polyandry, a woman will choose one among of her many husbands to be a social father for her child. In this arrangement, the man acting as father must win the child's affection and respect. He cannot expect it as his right. So then he protects and cherishes the children, but they are not his in the sense that he is seen to have had a share in their physical procreation. The man cannot then relate to the children as his property because they come from the mother through the mother and belong to the whole people. So matrifocal cultures weave a webwork of non-possessive intergroup relationships which supports a growing being through every phase and crisis of unfolding life. And there are always going to be crises. And that's all I have for tonight. That was enough crust I peeled back. That was
that's the difficult things to hear.
Yeah, to think about, right? Because like I said at the beginning, shuddering at the word communism is a natural reaction, but that's really, I mean, and that's the one, like before I got really clear, my friend down the road said to me at one point, so you want to start a commune? That's what you're wanting to do, is start a commune. And and he shuddered at that, right? Commune. And we shudder at this concept of communes. Oh my God, it's a commune.
Yeah, it's. But then, and did you say anything back to him?
Well, at that point, I wasn't clear enough about it.
Yeah, it just. I mean, you're doing such a beautiful work at weaving all these difficult things together. And now I think if you find yourself in a situation like that, it's so
that
easy
was a few years ago. That's why I said I had to really stop. When I started typing that word communism, I had to really stop and just, I was trying every which way I could to not use that word.
Right.
And finally I had to come and say, well, it's okay. We have that beautiful picture you drew. What is auto cohabitation de Jesus? It's living together, working together. It's communing together. That's what communism is. It's communing together.
And it's a natural state of human existence.
It is.
Just that we've all participated in being the victims of this kind of crazy experiment. Let's fragment everything. Let's walk as far as we can from what is natural, from what
Yeah.
is healthy, from what is
Into the
good, from
total
what is
unnatural communism.
loving, and it's amazing that even to this, even people wanting to, better life, being conscious about the economic dominance and the Great Reset and all that, and but then they get conflicted when they face this coming together. Hey, you know, getting out of the cell phone, out of this uh, uh, stupid browsing and scrolling through nonsense, is that's not technology. um having a profound relationship with somebody else, singing together, dancing, that's so much fulfilling. It's so much more fun.
Yeah.
But and we want that so much. At the same time, we don't have it, and at the same time, we are kind of afraid. Um, it's like when you've been isolated. So we have some type of, I think, PTSD. That's what humanity has.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's so
From this.
traumatized by this isolation that it's, once you're faced with the opportunity, because this is the opportunity, right, to get out of that, you get scared. You're like, oh no, uh what, I have to be part of something, I have to
Yeah.
speak to somebody.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have to see my face.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But then you're doing such this beautiful work at explaining this patiently and weaving and working with the website, with the books, with these conversations in a way that is peaceful, is loving. You're not like bashing. You're not drawing attention by alarming or by, hitting on the adrenaline rush for people, or the crisis. We're in a crisis, and and no, your approach is so much more real, I think. um, and that's what people, I think, need to know. This The real thing is never going to be as like apparently entertaining, or like as full of uh of adrenaline, right? There's um the true freedom, winning the war, because that's what we're doing. We are winning the war. We're defeating the system. When you get out
Well,
of the
I don't even
system.
consider it, because I'm putting down the tools of war. I don't consider it winning the war. I'm just walking away, like you're gonna say.
But that's it.
It's just walking
That's
away. You just
that's
say no to the war, just being done with the war.
and in a way, I mean, just in another way to say it, that's winning the war. Not to not be to stop participating in it, right? That's your, because that's, you've explained before that when you participate, when you buy it, and when you fall for it, hook, line, and sinker, that's when you are being that war is working. When
Yeah.
you choose to, I'm not going to buy that, I'm not going to fall for that, then I mean, it's like this uh, vaccination thing. You don't get it, and I mean, you don't fall into the manipulation, and you go and not get it, and and even with all the stuff they try to pull off to force people, they can't force people. They can try, and they can coerce in other ways, but
Well, I'm on a thread of Reiner Fuel Mix on Telegram, and he probably has more than one that is orchestrated by many, many people. They're not all spawned from him, but the other day someone put on their post a German post with a German old guy, and I didn't look at it long enough other than to see that the old German guy was saying, we're millions of men and women, we're millions of humans, all we got to do is say no. Stop. All we got to do is stand up and say no. And it's like, that's so true. Stop saying yes to the system that binds you, and start saying yes to Holy Mother, who offers you absolute and total freedom.
And that implies,
and it's the same way I was telling you. Texas, just 600,000 drivers got their licenses revoked for not paying toll fees or something like that. 600,000. If 600,000 people said, fuck you, the toll fees would go away.
Yeah. And that's it. And well, when somebody realizes this, they will also start wondering, well, where do I go? What do I do? They have to find that desire, like you say, to see the change, to live the change, and with that, we invite them to join the people that are actually wanting that change and are walking that path of change, and of saying no, and of relearning, and being creative, and being full of energy, and full of health, and full of excitement and imagination, and where everything comes back to life.
Right. And desire.
So if you want to join us, you're welcome to join us. What's the next conversation going to be about?
We'll continue into the mysticum of Holy Mother, and hopefully there's next week will be a little bit more mystery, mysticum, and not so much crustiness. not so much ugly crustiness.
But that feeling that crust is fun. I really enjoyed this.
Absolutely necessary.
I really enjoyed this, and this one, and I guess one of my this philosopher was trying to get there. When he realized that, and this is the very powerful thing. Like, he realized that he could be a lot more get a lot closer to the truth than any of the than Marx, and then any of the people we think they are the big, they are the big intellectuals, the big wise man or women, and big, I can't be smarter than him. And we don't realize that we can totally be ahead of the game. We can totally be like right where we need to be.
Well, like, I've heard the story that Einstein went to a kid's elementary school, right? And the kids in 3rd or 4th grade asked him, how can we be smarter than you? And he said, read fairy tales. And they scoffed at him and said, well, or how can we be as smart as you? And he said, read fairy tales. And they were like, whatever, how can we be smarter than you then if you read fairy tales? And he said, read more fairy tales.
Yeah.
Because the imagination, the desire, right?
Imagination, and being contemporary, being up to date, being, I mean, somebody 100 years ago, that was 100 years ago. We
And
can.
I've talked to a friend about, he's a mathematical engineer, and talked to him about making electricity, and he's like, oh no, I can't do that, I'm not nearly as smart as Nikola Tesla. And it's like, Nikola Tesla wasn't necessarily smart, he was just open.
Mm-hmm. It's just about believing in yourself, right? You
Well,
just gotta.
so one of the to become a participant, employee, family member of Owl Dojo, one of the
Mhm.
requirements is open-mindedness. And why do we require open-mindedness? Because in our dojo investigations, we're going to be punching holes in all the sacred cows of our beliefs. And a lot of people aren't up for hole punching, or punching holes in their sacred cows. They just want to hang on to their sacred cows
Yeah.
while they
Yeah.
wither in their arms, right?
Mhm.
No, 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 it's not dying, it's not dying, I'm going to find another one then.
Right.
So
But then
yeah,
with these conversations, they get to patiently listen and hear out the story, the explanation, and listen how this is not a crazy thing. This is not something unmeditated, and that everything, anywhere you poke into, any knowledge out there, is going to support this, right? If you're willing to uh, join the dots together, if you're willing to go deeper, that's it. Anything supports this conclusion, this destiny, the destiny of fulfilling your entelechy.
yeah,
Wow. Well, with that, anything else? Shall we close
yeah.
the
And
forum?
the live stream.
Already. So see you next week to continue further down this rabbit hole. See you soon.